At the most important concert of his life, Julian stood beneath the white stage lights and realized he could not remember the first movement. His hands were still playing. The bow traveled cleanly across the strings, and the hall held its breath, but Julian's mind was elsewhere, measuring a note that had sounded sharp 3 minutes earlier. He pictured the microphones, the recording levels, the critics, and the replay waiting backstage. When the final chord faded, 2,000 people rose. Julian bowed to them with an empty smile, already reaching in his pocket for the device that had captured everything. He listened before speaking to anyone. The applause on the recording seemed warm, yet all he heard was the flaw. Again he played that passage. Again. His manager touched his shoulder, friends waited with flowers, and his younger sister tried to tell him that she had cried during the slow movement. Julian nodded without looking up. By midnight, he had marked 17 defects in a performance the newspapers would call radiant. By dawn, he could describe every scrape and hesitation, but not the color of the hall, the faces before him, or the feeling of making music with living people. This had not begun as vanity. As a boy, Julian wanted only to make one clear, beautiful sound. He practiced beside an open kitchen window while rain darkened the courtyard. His mother cooked nearby and sometimes stopped chopping vegetables when a melody found its shape. Those pauses delighted him. Then teachers praised his precision, competitions rewarded control, and audiences began expecting excellence. The wish to play beautifully slowly hardened into a need to prove that he had played perfectly. Memory became evidence, recordings became judges, and each concert became a test whose result mattered more than the music itself did. Soon his days were built around review. He recorded rehearsals from 3 angles, labeled every file, compared tempos, and kept notebooks crowded with corrections. At meals, his fingers tapped difficult passages against the table. On walks, he wore headphones and studied himself. If birds sang above the street, he did not hear them. If someone laughed beside him, the sound arrived as interruption. He believed he was sacrificing the present for future performance, so complete that he could relax inside it. But every improvement sharpened his hearing for the next imperfection, and rest kept moving farther away from him. After the celebrated concert, Julian accepted a summer residency in a coastal town, certain that quiet surroundings would help him prepare a flawless album. Each morning he practiced in a rented room above a bakery. Across the square, an old street musician played beneath a faded blue awning. The man's violin was scarred, his coat was patched, and his open case held more seashells than coins. Yet people lingered. Bakers leaned in doorways. Children stopped chasing pigeons. Even hurried workers slowed for a measure or two. Julian noticed this gathering and disliked that he could not explain its devotion rationally. The old man was not technically perfect. Some notes frayed at the edges. His rhythm bent whenever a child danced, and once he paused entirely to let a church bell finish ringing. Julian recorded him from the upstairs window, then spent an evening analyzing the performance. The tempo wandered. The tone lacked polish. Still, when Julian replayed the file, the warmth that had filled the square was absent. The sounds were there, but the event was gone. Irritated, he blamed the microphone, adjusted its settings, and tried again the next day. The second recording felt more lifeless than the first. On the fifth morning, Julian carried his finest portable recorder downstairs and approached the awning. He offered the old musician money to perform in the rented room, where the walls were treated and the traffic could not interfere. The man examined the recorder, then Julian's carefully packed violin. He took the money, folded it once, and placed it under a stone beside his case. Then he pointed to Julian's instrument, raised his own, and began a lively phrase. Julian understood the invitation. Before joining, he set the recorder on the edge of the fountain and pressed the red button firmly. The old musician stopped at once. He lowered his bow, walked to the fountain, and switched the device off. Julian turned it on again. The man switched it off again. No argument followed. The old musician simply waited, violin resting against his chest, while the square continued around them. A delivery cart rattled over stones. Someone opened a window. Bread scented the air. Julian felt the minutes being wasted. At last, annoyed but curious, he placed the recorder inside its case and snapped the clasp shut. The old man smiled, lifted his bow, and offered the phrase once more. Julian entered cautiously. He kept part of his attention on intonation, part on the crowd, and part on remembering enough to evaluate later. The old musician gave him no stable arrangement to follow. He stretched a cadence when wind stirred the awning. He softened for a sleeping baby. When a dog barked twice, he answered with 2 bright notes. Julian missed an entrance while trying to predict what came next. Heat rose into his face. He nearly stopped, but the old man continued as though the missed note had become an open doorway rather than a failure to conceal quickly. So Julian followed. Not the imagined score, not the standard he carried like a ruler, but the sound occurring now. He answered the old violin's rough whisper with a clean, low tone. The man replied, and the melody turned between them like a ribbon caught by changing air. A girl in red shoes spun near the fountain. Julian adjusted his rhythm to her steps without deciding to do it. A baker struck a tray against a doorway, and both violins landed on the ringing metal note. Laughter moved through the crowd. For once, Julian heard it before hearing himself play. The piece grew quieter. Julian felt the wood beneath his jaw, the drag and release of horsehair across strings, the weight shifting through his feet. Details he had treated as distractions became the music's body. Salt air touched his lips. A gull crossed the roofline. The old musician watched neither Julian's fingers nor the gathering crowd. His attention seemed to rest inside each note until the note ended, then move completely into the next. Julian copied that movement, not as a technique to preserve, but because nothing else was required. Time lost its hard edges around them both that afternoon. Then the old man changed the melody into the theme from Julian's concert, the slow movement his sister had loved. Julian stiffened. He knew every danger hidden there and felt his mind rush toward its familiar ledgers. The old violin did not wait. It carried the theme gently through a cracked note, then held the next tone with such unguarded steadiness that Julian could only enter beside it. He played the passage he had reviewed hundreds of times. Yet this time he heard it traveling outward, meeting faces, windows, sunlight, and silence. It was no longer evidence about him. When the final note disappeared, nobody moved immediately. The pause was not empty. It held the shared knowledge that something had happened only once and could not be stored whole. Then the square burst into applause. Julian reached automatically toward the closed case beside the fountain. His hand stopped above it. The old musician began packing without bowing. He returned Julian's money from beneath the stone, set a white seashell in his palm, and walked toward the harbor. He offered no verdict, no instruction, and no promise of another performance. The lesson remained in what he had refused to preserve. Julian stood with the shell and discovered he could remember everything. Not merely the sequence of notes, but the girl's red shoes, the scent of bread, the gull above the roofs, the laughter after the tray rang, and the pressure of the bow in his fingers. He remembered the old man's breathing before the last phrase. He remembered his own missed entrance without wanting to erase it. Most strangely, he remembered no separate moment when he had achieved perfection. The performance was vivid because he had stopped standing outside it, waiting to inspect the life he was already living fully. The next morning, Julian left his recorder upstairs. He opened the window and practiced one phrase. When a note broke, he felt the old reflex to stop, rewind, and prosecute the error. Instead, he let the phrase continue long enough to reveal where it wanted to go. This did not make him careless. He still practiced slowly, corrected his hand, and repeated difficult measures. But correction returned to its proper place, serving the music rather than replacing it. He learned when to examine and when to inhabit. The distinction was quiet, but it changed the room around him each day. Months later, Julian recorded the album. He prepared with discipline and listened to each take once for practical corrections. Then, before the red light appeared, he placed the white shell where he could see it. During the performance, he gave himself to the measure under his bow. He did not perform for the future listener at the expense of the present sound. The album contained small human traces he might once have removed. Listeners later said those traces made the music feel near. Julian accepted their praise, but did not replay it until it became another cage for his mind. Presence did not ask him to abandon ambition. It changed the direction of his loyalty. An outcome could guide preparation, just as a distant lighthouse guides a ship, but the sailor still had to feel the water beneath the hull. Julian could plan a program, study a recording, or refine a phrase without sending his awareness away from the only place where music existed. The old habit said, "Capture this so it will matter later." The new habit said, "Meet this fully so it matters now." One collected proof. The other allowed a life to be felt as lived. Many of us carry Julian's invisible recorder. We compose an answer while someone is still speaking. We photograph a meal before tasting it, count reactions before absorbing what we made, and turn a holiday into material for later review. Even worthwhile goals can pull us beyond our own days. We finish one task while mentally entering the next. We monitor whether a celebration feels memorable and miss the warmth of the hand holding ours. The answer is not to reject records, plans, or improvement. It is to notice when the record has replaced the encounter itself completely before it ends. One Tuesday evening, a project manager named Mara closed her laptop after sending a presentation she had revised all week. Her first impulse was to reopen it, search for weak sentences, and imagine tomorrow's reactions. Then she saw her partner waiting at the kitchen table with 2 bowls of soup. Mara left the laptop closed. She tasted the rosemary, listened through the whole story of his afternoon, and felt his hand settle over hers. The presentation would receive its results tomorrow. This evening was already here. Keep this lesson with you and return whenever your mind needs a quieter path.